Well, hey guys, welcome to the Next Man Up podcast. I am your host, Mark Stanifer, and I'm honored to be with you for another episode today. Whether you're joining us today for the first time or you've been with us for a while, we are grateful. As always, you have chosen to be part of the community that is raising boys to become healthy and godly men. And just because we're coming out of a break a few weeks back, a quick reminder that if you want to connect with us, here are multiple ways. You can find us on the web at thenextmanup.com. You can find us on Facebook at NMU Journey is where we live there. And you can always email us directly at feedback@thenextmanup.com. However you prefer to engage with us, we encourage you to do so, and we look forward to that. Okay, so with me once again today is John Gregory. John, good to see you, my friend.
Hey. Good to see you. You know, as we're recording this, you can't see this because I have a virtual background, but the SEC basketball tournament is on TV behind my shoulder, and I'm doing my best
to stay focused. This did not come up last time, but you are in SEC country. You are a huge Bama fan. Honestly, I have no idea how Bama's done in the basketball season.
We're out.
Okay.
We lost.
Okay.
We're out.
Well, my boys in the Big Ten tournament just completely laid an egg. So anybody that's following college basketball will know when we're recording this, which is fine. It's going to air in a bit. But I appreciate your attentiveness to what we're about today, and because you can always like follow the scores later or watch the highlights later.
This is true.
Yeah, but I know this is discipline for you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're back once again. Excited to be with you, and that you guys are with us, listeners. Today we're going to talk about this idea that revolves around a phrase, "Love you, man." And I don't know, John. I don't know what comes up for you when you hear that. There are certain things that come up for me, and we'll unpack this as we go throughout the conversation today. But it's an interesting topic of men and love and expressing love to other men. And so, what comes up for you when you hear this idea of love you, man?
Well, there's a lot of stuff that comes up, and not to get too deep in it too fast, but it honestly, for me, until, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, it was really uncomfortable. This whole thing was uncomfortable. And it has a lot to do with how our family, expressed love when I was growing up, or didn't, honestly, at least verbally.
Yeah.
So that has a lot to do with it. And I got to share this. We were talking before we started, and I was like, I think there was a movie that had this title in it. And I found it. It's called I Love You, Man.
Okay.
It's a Paul Rudd movie from 2009. Okay. Wow. It's like
a few years ago.
Just like forever ago. But this is a classic illustration of when I think of this, what I feel like a movie line would go down. It says, friendless Peter Clavin goes on a series of mandates, which is hilarious, to find a best man for his wedding. But when his insta-bond with his new BF puts a strain on his relationship with his fiance, can the trio learn to live happily ever after? It's hysterical. So this whole idea of guys, their relationships, how they can be healthy, how you can express it, and how it may or may not interfere with the women in your life. It's an interesting conversation.
So we both come into this conversation with some thoughts. It will be interesting to see what other thoughts are generated as we get into this topic. But as I was first thinking about it, I was thinking about like the progression of how you express love verbally. And like love you can be sort of innocent and innocuous, maybe appropriate without like too much commitment. And then you could add man at the end of that. Love you, man, as like, you're a good dude, right?
Right.
We could have a bromance going on there a little bit. But it shifts for me, and maybe it's just me, but it shifts for me when you add the letter and the word I in front of that and
Oh, no
actually
doubt.
say,
Oh, sure.
I love you. And then I think it shifts even further when you insert that other person's name, like to
Mm-hmm.
whomever you're speaking. I love you, John. I love
Right.
you, Kristen, or to one of my kids, right? Like I don't know. You're shaking your head like you agree, but it just seemed like that's a progression of getting
Sure.
more and more serious with the words that you're using.
Yeah. And understanding, becoming aware of where you are with all those different usages and where the person that you're interacting with, whoever that is, where they may or may not be, because God knows when we assume we know what happens. So I think that's why this is a good conversation. And also thinking about this just for fun here. Uh, I'm sure you've had this conversation with people who've moved here from other countries about y'all love everything. You say you love everything. I mean, like you love your grass. What?
We have one word.
Yeah.
So I was going to get to this later, but let's just get right to it. English is stupid. I've told my kids that a bunch of times. Now, I'm kind of biased towards Spanish. I've enjoyed the Spanish language, and even learning Spanish when I was younger taught me a lot about English. But this one four-letter word in English represents so much, from like hot dogs and chocolate to college basketball to your most intimate partner, your wife. You know, like it's a very versatile word that is just not enough, right? It's just not enough out of context or out of relationship. It just I don't know. I've not had that experience with somebody from a different country,
Oh,
but
I
it
have.
makes
Yeah.
complete sense to me.
For someone who wants to do the best to choose the right words that you're using, and when you use them, they be literal. That can, oh, good grief, that can like cause an OCD moment of, should I really say this?
Right.
You know, yada,
Because
yada,
words matter.
and drive yourself a little crazy about it too.
Yeah. So we got onto this topic because of a thought that you were chasing and a bit of a story that you were sharing with me long before we even came into this recording currently. And you kind of set this up for us last week when you were talking about your father's passing and all the information he shared with you while you're at his bedside, right?
Mm-hmm.
But expand on that and set up how this came to be for us to be having this conversation
Mm-hmm.
as you worked through that specifically with this idea of expressing love.
Mm-hmm. Yes. We did not, the word love was not a word that we used in our house. Well, you know, we loved our cereal and ice cream, you know, whatever.
But with each other?
Right. To express feelings for one another, that word was, I don't remember using that word. I don't remember using it or it being used toward me. I mean, I have to really sit here and think about the first time a family member used the phrase, love you, I love you. I was definitely an adult. There's no question about that. And it was a learned behavior, which is interesting. We can go down that road, but it was almost like we have to make ourselves do this and learn how to do it, which sounds weird, but when you haven't had a practice of it and it's not been natural, you really have to do that.
Yeah.
And so as an adult outside of my family, I, had guy friends who would easily throw out the phrase when we're leaving the house after, having dinner or something, love you, man. And I would literally I was taken aback by like, what am I supposed to do?
Mm.
Which again may sound weird, but in my experience, because that was almost a sacred word that you don't just flippantly throw it out there. But their experience was different. So I had to really sit in that. And I have two friends, Chad and Matt. I'll go ahead and say their names. Chad and Matt. I don't know that they intentionally knew that they were being used in this way in my life, but we never had a conversation like, so what do you think about the word love you, man? I mean, we never talked about it, but I think they intentionally used that phrase with me to somewhat challenge me, but at the same time, give me this space of figuring it out. That makes sense?
Yeah, yeah. Like they intuitively knew something and were just kind of inviting you, but trying to draw you out as well.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting because when you first brought this topic up, it was around the time that I had talked to somebody else for the show. I forget which episode number, but not too long ago, Andrew Boskeljohn, and we were talking about his story. In his conversation, we were talking about his story, and like his experience was completely different than yours in the verbal expression. He heard all the time, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you at home. But he never saw it lived out. He never felt it. It was like words without the emotional connection or without the evidence that he was looking for. And he made a comment in the episode that still resonates with me or still rings with me, I guess. He said, I was starving for love as a teenage boy. And he had a father, and his mother was ill, so I'm not sure how much she expressed or could express, but he had a father that would express love verbally, but he wasn't feeling it by his actions. So there's another guy who's reconciling with this idea of what does it mean to be loved and what does it mean to express love from in this case, parent to child. But I think the application can really be from one guy to another. And
Sure.
So yeah. I think of Andrew's story, and then I also think of my own journey of learning to be comfortable with expressing love and affection toward another guy. And I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a challenge for me to work through, because I'm good now. But for a period of time, it would take me back into my high school days, my teenage days. And this conflating that I did of expressing love and being gay. And I don't know exactly where that came from, but in my mind, it was two gay guys, or it was a gay activity that was expressing love from one guy to another. And that was certainly not activity that I wanted to be associated with. And it also felt like expressing an emotion, and here is this man box that we get put into, that emotion is evidence of weakness. So you got a combination of me thinking it's weakness and it's associated with being gay. And I'm like, I don't want anything to do with that. Like, how can I run as far away from this as I can? And like there's my own experience of having to work through that and getting comfortable with, hey man, I love you. I really appreciate you. And I can say that today, but I couldn't in the same way 10 years ago, certainly not 20 years ago.
Yeah, you and I both had similar church lives growing up. And I'll just throw it out there that I think, and of course, I was a teenager in the 80s. So in the conservative world, the church world that I was in, oh yeah, you want to be as far away from any hint of homosexuality in that space. You want to be as far away from it as possible. God's going to hellfire and brimstone is going to come down on you, kind of thing. And yeah, we're teenagers,
Right.
We're teenagers. And thinking about your comment about Andrew being hungry for someone to show love to him, I think a fair way to sort of use that language is we were probably hungry for someone to just show us how to adequately express love.
Yeah. In a healthy way, and
Yeah.
in a masculine and confident and strong way, and yet still make that emotional connection.
Right.
Yeah. I think like just thinking about like you've had to work through it yourself from your own circumstances. Andrew's story is his own story. My story is my own story. I think the conclusion that it's leading me to, John, is that we have, as men, we've got to go through this reconciliation of our understanding of love and what it means to express love.
I want to know what love is. There you go. There we go.
Well, that didn't take long. You warned us.
I warned you. I'll try to keep it to one an episode. There you go.
Well, look, I in my home, we know we talk movie. And occasionally that comes out on the show. Probably not as I probably regulate that quite a bit, but you talk music, and so there we go.
There we go.
But I think it's right. Like I do want to know what love is. I could do the. I've actually put this in print before. I borrowing Tina Turner's song, "What's Love Got to Do with This?" Like
there you go.
I think love's got everything to do with this. But if we don't come to a reconciliation of what our experiences were like, and what we do with those, and build or redeem or heal, then we're just going to pass on without any sense of what we're doing. We're just going to pass it on. Or we're going to constrict or limit ourselves from experiencing that reciprocity or the affection, the expression and the affection of others.
Yeah. You're reminding me of a short little text conversation I had with someone yesterday who was celebrating that today's Friday. And I reached out to them first because I knew they had a challenging week. And all I said was, tomorrow's Friday. I didn't address what their pain was. And immediately they're like, oh, yeah, but my pain's coming with me. And I think this is relevant here because we can bring stuff into the relationships and be scared of being honest, being vulnerable, whatever the pain is, and allowing another person, in this case, another guy, to love us and express that and just be empathetic with us. And that's not normal for most of us.
Yep.
And certainly the older we get, the more we reject it. So it takes work.
I'm thinking about the comment that you made about your family having to learn it. This learned behavior, especially if we didn't get it as kids, or if we were put into the man box where you don't really show any emotion, although we sometimes get a pass for anger, which is really weird, right?
Right.
But can't show emotion, or love is tied to some pain in your past. We have to learn, or we're going to be kept back. Like the growth opportunity will be missed. There's in some of the professional work that I do outside of this context, there's a phrase that's been kicked around lately, and it's this: awareness is the answer. What's the question? Because the whole process of change starts with becoming aware. And at some point you became aware that what you were handed from your dad was impacting how you were relating to other guys. I became aware that, hey, there's more in these relationships than that I want. And I need to disconnect from my misunderstanding of it, but from when I was a kid. But it all starts with that point of awareness.
Yeah, and I think we'd be remiss to not acknowledge this certainly can impact husbands with their relationships with their wives, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm as you were saying that, I was thinking about to a dating relationship I had in my mid 30s. I now can look back some 18 years back and see where some of our communication with one another had to do with this very topic of how we both experienced and had learned differently of expressing love to one another. And we didn't do it the same. And the expectations were not the same. So if you are in a marriage and you're not aware of something like I just described, man, that could change the relationship just by getting aware that me and my wife did not have the same experience, and we need to explore that together.
Yeah, again, like becoming aware in yourself and doing some of that self work will open you up to positive ripple effects in all your relationships, in the work that you do and the people that you relate with. But it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
I had a conversation yesterday with a guy who's going to be one of our guests in a forthcoming episode. And this idea of doing the hard work came up in that conversation. It's been a theme of this show for years and years and years. Doing the hard thing so that you can experience the better thing. Coming to grips with your understanding of love and affection and how you express that or how you don't and where that comes from. Man, that's hard. But unless you get past that, you'll be capped and you'll be held back, and your relationships will be held back accordingly.
Yeah, and a natural question that I would ask myself or a friend who said that out loud, that it's hard to try to explore that is, what does make this hard? Is it because I have to be vulnerable? Is it because I have to expose something that I don't really want to expose? Is it because I have to just simply say, I don't know the answer here? Whatever that answer is, I have to be willing to, best word I got is to humble myself to say, I don't have all the answers. And if that's all it means to get past the hard thing as a guy, then okay. But can I just do that? Can I just say, I don't know the answer, and let's dive in here?
Yeah.
Can it be that easy?
I'm sure it can in some situations. It could also be, I've messed up and I've got to own my own stuff. Or I've been abused in the past and I've got real trauma that I've experienced and I have to come to grips with that.
Right.
And you and I both know people, some of the same people who didn't come to grips with some of the trauma in their past until trauma said it's time and forced them to come to grips with that. In fact, go listen to the episode I did with Michael Head a couple years ago. Like there's an example of where trauma found its way out. It needed to be dealt with physiologically, and it found its way out. And Michael's better for it today, but he had to walk a hard road. So I think there's multiple versions of what it could look like to do hard. Sure. But unless you do the hard thing, you're not going to get past it, and you're not going to grow.
No doubt.
So thinking about like what's at stake or why, like why not only is it beneficial for you as a person, there's also the people that are watching you and the people that are coming behind. And we spend a lot of time talking about fathers and sons here. That's really the mission of this show. So let's just kind of drill into that for a minute. You, Dad, are setting an example for your son of what it means to show and to receive. And not just in the home, it's with other guys as well. And so when we talk about what's at stake, John, your story impacts is impacted by your dad. Andrew's story was impacted by his dad. We know that dads are so influential. What is it, Dad, that you are doing to reconcile with your own experience with love so that you can pass on to your son a better one? So, as an example, how are you modeling your love with your actions and with the way that you're investing in your son's life? How does it communicate that you are loving him? Or the other way around. Maybe your actions demonstrate it, but he needs to hear you say it. I love you, son. Or I love you, and fill in his name.
So, Mark, you're making me think of the 5 love languages book,
oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
That's not just for husbands and wives. That's great.
So that's an interesting and astute observation, because so much of the application of that has tended toward a romantic relationship.
Yeah. Open our brains here, people. Sorry. But the idea, going back to Andrew's story, for example, he was hungry for someone just to live it out, not just say it.
Right.
So I'm guessing his love language is not what he was getting, obviously. So whatever his love language was going unmet, right? So that dads, if you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, go get this book. And actually, it's been written in different versions, like love languages for kids. And, so you can find the right one that could actually be most helpful to you right now. And so that would be, all right, how does my 14-year-old son, what is his love language?
Yeah.
And if it's probably not mine, possibly. So being aware of that, then I can start being intentional. If his love language, let's say, is gifts, all right, I don't want to go crazy with that, but how do I meet that need for him?
Yeah, it's an excellent point, because so much of that book's application has been toward the romantic relationship, husband and wife. But the more you can understand how your boy is wired, the more you can meet him where he is. And it's probably going to be harder if he's not wired like you are. It'd be easier if he's wired like you. But again, back to this doing hard stuff thing. Like, being a dad is hard. It's hard. And to do it well is even harder. And so here's an opportunity for you to not only reconcile with your past and your understanding of love, but to be aware and to reconcile with how your boy is wired, and learn to love him in that way, and then engage him in the understanding, John, like you were talking about. Like, not everybody is wired his way, so right. Help him as right. He's able and as he grows to understand that there are lots of different experiences, there are lots of different wirings, and he's got to be able to navigate this as he grows up as well.
I can only imagine. I don't have this experience, but if your 17-year-old son is having his first real, he's in love with this classmate, but yet they're something's in the way here. Imagine the power and the lifelong change that could happen if this conversation is the solution.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that, it may be that that's his mate for life and you can help get them started on a better path. Or it may be they realize, if there's a better spouse for me, and now I know better myself how I give and receive love, and I can seek the right spouse who matches that better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think one of the things I'm more and more convinced of and wish I had done more of as a dad is that sharing our own stories are a significant way for us to pass this wisdom and this knowledge on to our kids. We can teach, and tell all the time. But if you can share it in the form of, here was my story, here's an example from my past, I think that connection is so much more strongly established around the individuals, but also around the topic as well. And so, like, Dad, as you're thinking about how to do some of this and engaging your boys, think about your own stories and be willing to share your story and to be vulnerable. And of course, yes, there's appropriateness based on the age and all of that. But it starts with you remembering your own stories and being willing to share them with your boys. I think that's a phenomenal way to make that connection, to show your boy that you were like him at one point, right? You're not just this all-knowing dad today. At one point, you didn't have it all figured out. And you experience some of the same things that your boy is experiencing. Like, being able to share our stories is just really, really powerful.
Be Clark Kent, because you can't be Superman all the time.
Although it would be pretty cool to just slip into a phone booth. And,
just take off.
I mean, I might lose the red Speedos and keep the cape, but I don't have the Superman body to rock the Speedos either.
No, neither one of us do.
So before we get to some final thoughts here, what I will say is, this is a good setup for an episode that is coming down the road. And the theme there is how our stuff as dads, as men, has a ripple effect onto those that we care about, our wives and our kids. And so in this situation, the stuff is your understanding of love. And is that blocking you, or is that propelling you as a dad to pass on something that is healthy and whole and godly in the process of raising your son to become a man? John, any last thoughts before I bring us to a conclusion?
Yeah, you were just making me think of a couple of things that I'll throw out there as possible helps.
Sure.
Read a really good book last year called Love Like You've Never Been Hurt by Pastor Jensen Franklin. And he touches on a lot of good things, similar talking points that we've talked about today. So I would encourage anybody to read that. And it will address all your relationships, not just your relationship with your buddies. Probably actually won't talk about that a lot, but it'll definitely challenge you and encourage you to move forward in how you love people. And particularly, of course, those who have hurt you. And then I would just encourage everybody along this line, from a devotional standpoint, go read 1 John, the book. Just go read the book of 1 John. Before we got on there, I counted. There's 105 verses in the book of 1 John. Just a little trivia note there for you. You could read that in one sitting. Mm-hmm. So just go read it and take whatever notes you get from it, because there's plenty there.
Good stuff. So as we wrap up these episodes, guys, you know that I tend to put a challenge or an invitation out there so that this isn't just entertainment or information, that actually works toward your transformation. So here's an idea, a specific challenge. I wonder if you could picture your father or that father figure from your childhood embracing you in a healthy way and telling you he loves you. Like, just sit in that for a moment and receive that as a gift, or as a way to fill that need that you were longing for, or as a reminder of what you had as a boy. And now picture giving that to the men in your life, or the boy in your life, your son as an example, or your buddies, or even your dad. Maybe that is the hard thing for you, picturing and giving that with your dad. I don't know, but there's enough space in there for you to experience and receive what I think could be beneficial for you. And even if it's not an embrace, maybe it's just a simple "love you, man" expression. It can be so powerful, and it can deepen those friendships and those other relationships that you have. So there's the invitation. The benefits are there as we've talked about them, but ultimately it comes down to a choice, and the choice is always yours. Okay, well, John, thanks for being in the co-host chair with me today and engaging in this conversation. Guys, I hope this was beneficial for you. Just a quick reminder, if you've got feedback, suggestions, comments, questions, maybe you've got a story that you want to share with us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. All right, you know the drill. Same bat time, same bat channel. Next week, we will be back again. Until then, adios. To send us your comments or questions, you can email us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. The theme music is by Jacob Stanifer at Jacob Stanifer Music, and this show is part of the NRT Podcast Network.